Okay, all right. So prepare. What are these other questions? Maybe I should just run through them.
Yeah, I think we start with all this, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, I'm just looking at these other questions that have...
Oh, they've come already. That's a good question.
Which one's that?
This one about emerging practitioners.
Oh, yeah,
tips to
right.
securing- Oh, sure. So I just wanted to let everyone know that if you have questions, the email is outreach@screenaustralia.gov.au, and you can send them in from now. We're just waiting for people to join, and then we'll formally start the session then.
I think we have one more formal minute before we can start having conversations with you all. So did you manage to deal with that Content London one today from Luke? You ready to go? Hi everyone, welcome to the Screen Australia Outreach for Business and Audience. My name's Richard Harris, I'm the Head of Business and Audience if I haven't met you before. And I have Harry Avramidis, who's our Head of International here at Screen Australia, who works for me. So I just thought there's probably some more people coming online, but I thought in the meantime I'd just give you a quick overview of what Business and Audience does, and then we'll run on to talking specifically about markets. So the Business and Audience Department looks after all of the kind of industry development outside of project-specific work. So we look after development of businesses and companies, and also creative practitioners who are at a certain stage of their career. And so we have a number of parts of our department. We look after distribution, look after all of the international markets and the talent support out to the festivals, and we also look after recruitment and all of the sales analysis that happens in that part of the world. So we have a broad brief, which is to really, essentially we're concerned about all of the things that are trying to help our industry grow, get us out to the world, and take our projects out as well. So in the international front, we look after both, as I said before, the festivals. So we're actually constantly engaging with all those festivals, trying to get our films and projects up in front of them. And obviously the other part of the international part of our business is we take delegations out, and then we actually take specific stands and delegations to the markets, which is what we're here to talk about today. So just in terms of the markets that we look at, we've been really focused on, over many years, at television markets and feature film markets and documentary markets. And in more recent years, we've been spending a bit more time in attending those markets and conventions around online. And occasionally, what we're seeing also is numbers of those markets are increasingly including new technologies such as virtual reality and other parts of our screen industry. So we just thought, the other thing I guess you'd say about our program is that we look every year. It's a kind of ongoing, movable approach that we take to the markets, where as the industry is obviously going through a lot of disruption and a lot of flux, we're constantly looking at which of the markets and festivals that we think are the ones that need attention. There are clearly ones that have particular place in the landscape. Obviously, in the feature film front, the Cannes feature film market. There's a number of others, Toronto and Berlin in particular. And then on the television space, we look at the MIPS, the MIPComs and MIP TV, and more recently we've been looking at Content London, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. We obviously have quite a bit of activity on the documentary front. We do a lot of documentary at Screen Australia, so we support a lot. And we support a lot of practitioners to attend different festivals and conferences. Probably the biggest one in terms of a market is the World Congress of Science and Factual Producers, but we also attend at different times depending on what films get in. We have attendance at IDFA or Hot Docs or numbers of the other documentaries, festivals and conferences that happen. In more recent years, we've also been attending VidCon because as the increase of the online series has essentially ballooned and our involvement in supporting that talent has escalated, we've been engaging with that sector as well. So that's been an important part of where we've been going. And on top of that, we also take delegations of talent to numbers of those. So that's really just as a sort of broad flavour of what we do in the market space. We look every year, for example, on the television front, we've been looking at the two MIP TV conferences or markets, and we've been shifting around our engagement with each of those. And this year, in the last couple of years, we've been upping our engagement with the Content London, which is on our agenda right now because it will be happening in the next couple of weeks. So that's just a broad snapshot of where we've been and the sort of general approach we take. So we'll be looking again at next year's series of markets. There's obviously the key ones we'll be doing again, but continuing to adapt and evolve as the industry itself evolves. So having said that as a bit of an introduction, I'm just trying to work out how we're going and whether we've got enough people, but I think we do. So we're going to just run in, we'll be answering questions as we go, but I thought I'd hand over to Harry now to possibly talk about some of the kind of key points about the market approach we have, in particular, obviously, for those of you at the other end of the camera, how you can actually, how you can be eligible, how you get in, how it all works, and what advice we can give. So I'm going to hand over to Harry right now.
Cool. Thanks, Richard. And if you have questions, the email again is outreach@screenaustralia.gov.au. So yeah, generally the support that we give our industry at markets, there's a few factors. Some of it revolves around what's called international markets marketing support, and that's part of what Richard was just saying about the ever-changing landscape. So we're looking at the key markets, the key pitching events, the key labs, and other certain events around the international calendar. Most of the funding becomes available for applications open about 3 months before the actual event. So if you're not already signed up to our e-news or you're not actively looking at our screenaustralia.gov.au website, it's a good idea to just keep an eye on that to see what's coming up on the calendar year. That's a great research also to have a look at all the markets. We've got a market profile section which sort of lists, and our current activity at each market. So the support that's able to be applied for is $5,000 for most of the events. The Cannes film market is $6,000, and so what we're looking for in those applications, it's really the strategy going into the market, what your slate looks like for most of these events, and the key to, we've got a question about how to make my application more competitive. I guess the real key is research, and that's a matter of either giving us a call, finding out about the market, or just doing your own research online. It would be looking at, who you're intending to meet and making sure that's the right market for you. Researching what activity went on in the previous year, as far as business, and looking at this list. If we talk, the first festival on it, the Marché de Film, which is the Cannes film market, and probably the biggest film event of the year, it would be looking at the different programs. So we've got actually another question from Torsten about VR And you know, we found applications last year to, you know, really researching what Next are doing under the Marché. So we're able to give some of those companies support to get over there. But yeah, I'll just run through the eligible markets, and this is all on the website, so please go out there, and as we're, you know, changing things, that's the best place to get the most recent information. So we've got the Cannes Film Market, World Congress, which this year the applications have just closed, well, they've been assessed, and it's in San Francisco this year. Next year, interestingly, it will be in Brisbane, so there's, you know, there's easy access for the documentary community in 2018 to World Congress. The pitching events that we currently support are the Berlin CoPro Market, MIP Formats International Pitch, MIP Digital Series Pitch, the Hot Docs Forum, the Forum IDFA, and the International Financing Forum in Toronto. The labs are Berlinale Talents, which is eligible for producers and directors, and the TIFF Talent Lab, which is for directors. Then the other events we're currently supporting, Talent USA, which we can talk a bit more about later, VidCon, as Rich has mentioned, and Content London, which is on our doorstep. So Content London, we're looking for TV writers and producers. VidCon, obviously online creative talent. And Talent USA, we're looking for the emerging writers and directors, but those who have had proven international success either by A-list festival selection or they can prove significant audience traction. So that's the travel funding sort of component, and I advise, if you're looking at those events, to go on the website and just check, you know, what the requirements are, what the eligibility are. But at certain events we also have umbrella stands, and we can offer umbrella discounts for registration. So again, it's good to check. You know, the main one for us is MIPCOM and MIP TV. So the support we can give the industry is we have a stand which the industry can access, but also in the lead up they can come to us for advice about who to meet or who's going, and other things like that. So yeah, that's part of the support, and that's the other support. If we're not physically at the markets, could be calling us beforehand for strategic advice, or if you're having trouble contacting certain people, we can often...
Yeah, so a good example of that is, for example, with the MIP television market. So we have they're the two major sales and distribution markets, and they're both in Cannes. One's in October and the other one's in April. This year we didn't actually attend MIP TV, but we've actually maintained the stand. So we didn't actually have a Screen Australia physical presence there, but we actually had the stand that people could use, and we had a lot of activity in that stand from Australians, and so it was still a useful thing to do, and we'll be looking at that every year. Whereas at MIPCOM this year we actually had a Screen Australia presence, people could attend it, there were still the discounts that happened. So those two are kind of the main sort of markers for the industry. They include both, or they do kids, they do online, they do you know, interactive, and they have the Emmys for the interactive Emmys, and they also do the main sort of television world as well. So we still get quite a significant amount of people going to those two markets, obviously with the television market increasing as it is, and more Australians getting involved in there. So it's important to know that there are going to be times when we're going to be present, and even those when we're not, there's actually we still might have a bit of a presence. The one, as Harry said, the other one we have coming up soon is obviously Content London, which has been interesting because it's actually grown in the past few years. When we first attended it about 3 years ago, there was probably a handful of Australians there, probably 10 to 15. A couple of us who attended it suddenly realised it was actually growing in strength. There was lots of commissioners, so lots of producers were interested in going there compared to the MEPs, which tend to be dominated by distributors and sales agents. And so what happened is that this year the demand for Content London, which is coming up, there's going to be something like 80 Australians there, including broadcasters and producers. So we have a sense it's going to continue to grow in terms of where it sits on the calendar.
And Content London is interesting And this is another point we might mention is the state agencies are funding quite a few, you know, for Film Victoria's funding quite a few, Create New South Wales. So, you know, if you're checking our website and you see an event that you really want to get to and it's not on our list, it's always good to call us or call your state agency to see if there's, you know, other funds available.
And I think getting back to the point that Harry was making before, I think we would absolutely encourage people to contact us in terms of thinking before they come in for money, or even if they're not coming in for money, just to get a sense of the strategy, how they're thinking about going things. We're very open to hearing from people and trying to suggest ways they might think about putting in an application, or the way they might think about their strategy for the market, even if they're not. The other thing that we do try to do as well is as best as we can, we try and keep on top of who's who in the zoo, in terms of who are the people at the you know, who's actually attending, who are the right people at the different broadcasters, the different OTT companies, all of those companies that might be there for potential commissioning. We can't necessarily always make a recommendation or an introduction, but we can certainly try and say, look, you've been trying to find who is at Amazon, who's in the comedy space. If we can find the right sort of name that we know, we're happy to pass that on. So we're absolutely there as a resource, both whether we're physically there with you or not, to try and allow you to make the most of that market opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we'll start answering some of your questions because we've already used up 15 minutes. So let's have a look here. This is one from Shannon, who says, hello, I'm currently entering film festivals overseas and was wondering what your thoughts are having an international sales agent engaged before you do this. Are they required to help get the film into target festivals, or is it better to wait and see opportunities arise once in the festival? So it's a pretty good question. A
good question. Not sure what the answer is. It depends. I think increasingly, the truth is you do not need a sales agent to necessarily do anything, certainly not to get into a festival. A lot of filmmakers make a call as to, you know, they want to get the film to actually get that heat from the festival before they choose their sales agent, and hence, you know, start to make their sales and then go further. But I have to say 90% of films that we see that are going through have already got a sales agent before they go to the festival, or before they head to a market. So it really depends on the strategy that you have for your film and what you want to retain or what heat you want to retain. It's like anything. It's like, and particularly for less experienced filmmakers, it's quite useful. But the only thing I would say about having a sales agent, they may be putting up no money for your film, and what they do is then they will make the call on what the deals that your film will get and how those rights are, you know, exploited. So, you know, every filmmaker has to make a call as to what works best for them and what they're prepared to give up in order to get that experience and that sales track record on board.
It's a very interesting question, and we haven't talked about you know, the festival and awards support, which is different to the market support we're talking about. But obviously, if you are selected for one of the major festivals, and again, go to our website and just check that list, and our colleague Dale Fairbairn looks after that program. It's worth looking at that list, but you know, once you are selected and when the news are out, if you don't have a sales agent, they come knocking on your door pretty quickly. If it's an A-list festival, you know, sometimes it's a hard question because sometimes it's great to have a sales agent to help you with your overall international strategy. But you know, I think the key there is we find a lot of films don't really work out their festival strategy beforehand, and maybe lose opportunities that they could have by not, you know, going for those festivals which are going to get the most, you know, publicity and attention, which are really the main ones that people track. So just, you know, keep that in mind and don't, you know, go for those big festivals first and then work out the
it's tricky. Yeah. It's a little money in the box. Just for those who may have just joined in the conversation recently and may have just joined, outreach@screenaustralia.gov.au if you have any questions. happy for you to continue to do that. In fact, here we go. I even have one. Do you provide support for projects that have not received Screen Australia funding for production? Indeed, we do, and in fact, quite often. So we're very Catholic in the way that we approach both, and this goes for both the P&A support we provide for films to get out and also films going to the market. We take a very Team Australia approach. Whatever films, whether they're selected for the festivals or whether the people are coming in for the market to take projects out. Look, our goal really is that, or what we would love is to see lots of people making films that have no Screen Australia money in them, because in fact, the more films that don't have our money in, the more we can use for other things. So we absolutely even if you go to the Cannes office now, once upon a time it used to have Screen Australia everything. Its banner is literally now just says Australia. And that's kind of emblematic of the approach that we take. So absolutely, when it comes to markets, or even, certainly when it comes to festivals, it's which ones get selected by the selectors. And I will also tell you just on that front, when the selectors come out from Cannes or from Berlin or wherever they are, we're showing them everything that filmmakers show us, and we really put forward the films that we think that they, will fit their festival and we think have a chance of getting through. So certainly on the festival front, we're absolutely agnostic, and in terms of going to the markets, we're really keen to support people that have projects in financing or development or that are, post-production that don't have our money in. So I think that's a pretty, I think that answers that question.
Totally. This support we're talking about when it's at market, we're talking about the discount registrations or the stand umbrella support. That's for all Australians. It's not just for people we've funded in the past, or so that's open to everyone, as well as we promote things going, like for instance for Content London, we've got a new showcase which the comms team have been working very hard on, and that lists everyone going. Same if we're at Cannes or other markets, we list all the Australians going and their content, whether we've got investment in it or not. So we
love all our children. Yep. So should we talk a little bit about preparing for markets? One of the questions we've had, we've done these sessions live to actual audiences, not just online, but when we've done them, there's been a lot of interest in the actual preparation for markets and some of the key things that we've seen and the intel that we've gathered over the years. And I think just in terms of preparing, and I think going back to Harry's point, and he talked about it before you even come in for application, but the concept of research is a really important part of whichever market you want to go to, which is the right market, with the market you're actually attending, who you're wanting to meet with. So we just encourage that all the time, and certainly part of your research should be talking to us if you think that's, you want a little bit of advice or some direction of where to go to. But we would certainly say that that's a key part. Secondly, I think it's about working out. The research will also help you to work out how to pitch, and I don't even mean just pitch in the room, but actually just be aware of where your project sits, where you're meeting with a commissioner or a sales agent, knowing what their slate is, how your project fits with their slate or doesn't fit with their slate, knowing what's on that broadcaster, if it's a broadcaster you're talking to, knowing what sort of audience that they have. So all of those contribute to, you can do the greatest pitch in the world, but if you haven't got the right audience in the room with you, then it's kind of wasted breath. So we certainly have had feedback over time that I think many producers have, or filmmakers have, opportunities to improve in that area. So I think I'd be encouraging that the other time. I think on the other end of it, I think the key message that we would probably say on this front is that the Australians are not brilliant at following up. And so there's lots of meetings about all sorts of projects, but then they say, I never hear from them following that project. And now whether that's people have not realised that actually the meeting was more positive than they thought or whatever it might be, but there's not that kind of response to actually go back and say, yes, I heard what you said and here's where the project's progressing. So I think it's both at the front end in terms of the research and being prepared, and at the other end and actually following up and continuing to, without necessarily being in their face, but continuing to actually keep that communication going.
Yeah, I think research is definitely the key, and there are other ways, you know, to market or to choose the right markets that you're going to, whether that be going, you know, if you're targeting particular partners for your projects, you might be, instead of, you know, hounding them at a market where they're quite busy with many meetings, it might be better sometimes to just get on the phone between markets and find out from those particular partners, whether they're sales agents, financiers, you know, where is the best time in their calendar year to meet them, or what markets they feel is the best for meeting them and things like that, or get a sense of what they're looking for. And a lot of that can be done through, you know, online stalking of their websites or reading trades about what they've done recently. So there's that, and and researching the actual event to make sure it's the right one for you is definitely...
The other thing I think that's important to say about the markets, and particularly the festivals, and particularly feature film festivals, but to some extent the other ones, the way those festivals in particular Cannes, Toronto, Berlin for feature films have been, and even Sundance and others, have been where the deals have been made. So traditionally that's where the heat was, and everyone led up to those festivals, and there was massive stories about the sales that came out of them, and everyone was looking for all of that sort of heat around what you could get at that actual festival. What we're increasingly seeing is that those festivals are great for the films that get into the competitions or might be selected or whatever, but actually the deals are now like 365 days a year. So there's the level of those peaks of the festival, you know, leading up to those festivals, and then sales, and then nothing happening for another 3 to 6 months, have kind of gone. And often you'll see, even in the lead up to the festivals, those actual deals are either being done. So one of the complaints you get from many buyers is, in fact, by the time they get to the festivals now, there's not many films that are absolutely unfettered. So just in terms of thinking about what your festival or market strategy should be, you should be recognising that that's, you know, and one of the reasons I'm saying this is also that the festivals and markets are great, and it's important to be there, but you don't necessarily have to be there as the be-all and end-all, depending. So again, your market strategy may depend on shifting from suddenly thinking it's the sugar hit moment that you need, rather than saying, actually, I'm going to not attend all of the markets, I'm only going to attend this one or that one, and you can potentially be a bit more strategic. But what it does mean is that your communication has to be better between the markets and kind of ongoing between the markets, and not just hope that those markets are going to provide those moments. I'm just going to go to another question, which I've had pop up on my screen in these very exciting modern times. I'm an emerging filmmaker. Is there a particular market that targets emerging talent?
A particular...
Not a market.
Well, I mean, we could talk a bit about... Well, there, you know, the pitching events that we'd mentioned earlier, great waste. You know, they're competitive, the pitching events select the projects going. So if you're wanting to break into the market, it gives you a kind of seal of approval that they've vetted these things. So the ones currently, I mean, we're talking across various things, but if we look at, say, the Berlin Co-Pro market, which is a bit more established, but definitely Berlinale Talents, for producers and directors is a great way to break into the scene, or TIFF Talent Lab, as we said, for directors. You know, the forum at IDFA, or Hot Docs Forum for the doco side, and, you know, MIP Formats pitch, or there's MIP Digital Series pitch, which gets you in front of a room of people and gets you noticed. So I'd recommend definitely looking at those. But
there are some opportunities, and they're all on the website. And we're happy to, if you're happy to take an email on that in terms of giving you some other thoughts. I mean, generally, there's not like a big market which is deliberately set out for, you know, this is specifically emerging filmmakers. So often you do get emerging filmmakers who go to Cannes and have to try and find their way through the big markets and work out how they go. So it's a bit tricky to work out how that works, but there are certainly lots of opportunities, and often the opportunities are in Australia to look at, you know, some of the other festivals. And, you know, for example, there's the Melbourne Film Festival runs 37 South, but it also has the Accelerator Labs. So there are a number of things that have opportunities for emerging filmmakers to get some sort of level of sort of heat and attention that can take them somewhere else. I have one other question here, which is there a restriction on what you can spend the $5,000 of travel support on?
Well, the support, you know, with your application, you can have a look at the funding guidelines, but you'd have to submit your budget with the application. I mean, there's no restriction that you can't spend it on pitching materials or something, but you'll probably find once you get your quotes for airfares, if you're travelling overseas and accommodation, that $5,000 gets chewed up pretty
Normally
good.
we would expect, normally when you're going to Cannes, for example, $5,000 chews up quite a bit of your airfare and accommodation. Some of the other festivals and markets may be a little bit cheaper, but a lot of it does go on that and maybe just a little bit of day-to-day expenses. But there are some, we do, having said that, when it comes to the festivals, and you can talk to Dale Fairburn about that, we do also allow for some additional costs for the actual marketing materials that go with your campaign for the film that's in the festival. So,
That's right, yeah.
but in terms of we would expect, you look at the application form, it'll give you a good sense, but normally it's on those things like travel and accommodation and you know, general expenses, and you go through it pretty fast.
Yeah, and I just regards to the previous question about emerging markets to go, I just would say it's really about setting your expectations. So if you're going to get the lay of the land, to start to casually meet people, then any of these markets are worthwhile. But yeah, if you're going, you've just got to set your level of expectations so the outcomes are easy to achieve.
Know that you're going for reconnaissance rather than to try and land the greatest deal ever.
Yeah, and if you are planning to go, as we said, just give us a call and we'll help you. I think we've run out of time, which is...
I think we have.
There's a lot more to cover, so yeah, any questions?
And as Harry said, it's all on the website, and we're happy to take any emails or phone calls that you might have to give you further information. So other than that, have a good afternoon. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, tuning in.